Hi everyone, it's Michael, and I want to let you in on a little experiment that I'm performing with No.7 in my collection, my Dendrobium nobile, to my kids. And just to give you an overview, this big plant on the left is the mother plant, this plant on the right is the division from that plant, and all of these little guys are the keikis that were harvested from the division. Believe it or not, all 6 of these plantlets were harvested from that one division. And that's not all. 2 additional keikis were harvested about a month prior. Now I want to explain why the division grew keikis while the mother plant did not. And this is because this one was unwell, it was unhealthy, and it thought it was going to die. Oftentimes, and it actually happens with a lot of different orchid types, if a plant feels like its existence is threatened, it will try to reproduce asexually. So it'll grow little plantlets all over the place. And then the hope is that one of those little plantlets anchors onto something, is able to use water solution, and live on. So because the mother plant is so well established and so healthy, I have not once seen a keiki on it. It has no reason to believe that the mother plant won't survive. But this one, which I feel so bad about, I neglected for so long that it produced tons of keikis. Now I did not harvest all of these at the same time. I actually harvested this one and this one maybe a month prior to the rest, and the rest that have been harvested are now in semi-hydroponics. But I kind of wanted to experiment and see how they would fare in different grow methods. As you can see, the keiki planted in sphagnum moss has done very, very well. It has actually produced 2 new shoots and canes off of it. So it seems to really like sphagnum moss, which isn't a huge surprise. It's a great incubation method. I will say that water culture did not go so well for the plantlet I divided. It just did not like it. The root system is kind of just dying. You can see at the base now it's trying to produce another little growth, but I don't know if that's going to establish. I think this plant would actually do pretty well in water culture, but I just don't think that it's a great idea to try to get a keiki to establish with water culture. It's just a risky move. But that's what they look like as of this moment. I'm going to follow back up and I don't have a specific timeline in mind. I'm just going to see what happens. And then I'll give you an update when it's time. I want to take a moment to highlight that in between the first portion of this video and the second portion of this video, all of these plantlets were provided with identical care. They were placed in the same window and fed the exact same nutrient solution. All right, my friends, we are back for the final observations on all of the keikis from No.7 in my orchid collection, my Dendrobium nobile. And the timing couldn't be better because something very interesting is happening with the division that was struggling. And it is, you guessed it, putting out more keikis. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, keikis are often a response to a stressed out plant that believes it might not survive. And this plant has good reason to believe it will not survive. Do you see how the cane is dying back? Everything is becoming progressively more and more desiccated. Well, that's just one negative indicator. If I take you into the root system, you can see that all of the roots are beginning to rot and it has put out no new root growth. There's no vigorous green root tips. There's nothing to indicate that this plant is trying to reestablish. So this plant is definitely on its way out, in my opinion. And that's super unfortunate, but it makes a lot of sense given how long I neglected it. Now, I am not generalizing to all plants, but I will say this of my Dendrobium nobile to my kids. I believe that if there are too many keikis growing, it will drain the mother plant of its life force and eventually kill it. And that's precisely what appears to be happening right here. So that's super unfortunate. I wish I had tended to it sooner, but the good news is I have all of these baby plantlets that have successfully anchored on and rooted, with the exception of one. The one that did not do terribly well was the one I placed in water culture, which I do think is to be expected. I think that this plant would fare very well in this grow method as a mature plant, but it's just not nurturing enough to coax out new roots. But all of the other plantlets did phenomenally well. So I'll take you into the ones in semi-hydroponics. Even these tiny babies put out new root systems that are venturing down further and further into the leca. You can see some of the larger ones have been even more successful, putting out new growths and more roots. The one that I placed in sphagnum moss has gone absolutely insane. The root system has entirely occupied the entire container. Look at all of those vigorous green root tips. But similarly, even the ones in semi-hydroponics are doing the same thing. Look at all that. You have 2 new growths coming in, and if I take you into the bottom, you can see just how vigorous the new root growth is. So all of the babies have done quite well, so this plant will live on. I just really wish I had, tended to the division sooner rather than later. There are so many plants in my collection right now that need to be divided, and the reason I'm not dividing them is because I know that I will neglect the divisions. I just don't have time to take care of any more plants, which is the reason why I will be gifting all of these divisions to my friends and family. I already have too many orchids, and taking care of 10 of the exact same plant is just, it's just not in the cards for me. So that's what I wanted to show you. I do think it's really, really interesting. I'm so pleased to see how well and how vigorously these plants have taken to their new grow method. So the division's death will not be in vain. And with that, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. Be sure to support one another in the comment section because I'm so seldom available to do so. Don't forget to click subscribe and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, guys.